If you know me already, it's most likely for gacha games. But what you might not know is that I also play a lot of roguelites. So I was thinking, what if someone combined those two? Oh right, I forgot that every single gacha already has a roguelite in it. But well, despite how many of them there are, I'd never choose to play any of these for fun over a regular roguelite. So let's talk about why roguelites in gacha games just don't work. Obviously, I didn't play every single gacha game, and a lot of the ones I did play, I don't play anymore. So if I have outdated information, I'll happily be corrected in the comments. My goal here is to take a few popular examples, or less popular ones I'm personally invested in, and use those to explain my point. With that, let's get into it. So what makes a good roguelite? For me at least, it's the variety. It's about having a lot of different ways to play, but also not being able to force any of them. And this is already where most gachas fail. Your biggest decision of the whole run is before it even starts. It's picking your team. A good roguelite asks you to adapt to what the game gives you. Gacha roguelites usually ask you to commit to a strategy before the run even starts. Let me use the simulated universe as an example here, because I played that a lot, but honestly, Fantasies of the Thousand Gateways in Vuva or Hollow Zero in ZZZ, and probably many more, play 90% the same, and have the same issues. One of them being that the characters you are using are complete characters, with their established kits. This is because the characters are made to be used outside of the roguelite, because that's most of the game, and they want to sell you these characters. But it means that if you start your run with DOT team, you are gonna want to find stuff that buffs DOT. Even if you manage to collect every single break blessing, it won't turn it into a break team. It's just a DOT team with some break synergy. And this is where another problem starts to appear. Because your characters already decide so much about your playstyle, the things you find during the run have much less room to actually change your strategy. Most of your upgrades are just boring stat-ups. And stat-ups are important. The Binding of Isaac, a very popular and one of my favorite roguelites, has so many items like that, and some of them are very powerful. But how popular would the game be if that was 99% of the items? What makes the game fun are all the unique effects. There's an item that makes you shoot a laser, or an item that makes you shoot a laser, or an item that makes you shoot a laser. But there's also an item that makes you shoot explosives, or an item that makes you shoot explosives, or an item that makes you shoot explosives. And yes, I'm intentionally describing this in the dumbest way possible, but the thing is, all of these are very different. And then you can also shoot fetuses. This works because every character in Isaac is basically a blank slate that you build on during the run. Well, as already mentioned, in gacha games, you are using characters with established kits. As a result, in HSR, you have a blessing that makes you deal more damage, and then a blessing that makes you deal more damage. But we used all the funny keywords that 90% of the players won't even understand. Fortunately, you don't need to understand, because these tend to be extremely easy. And when I say fortunately, I mean it's fortunate for all the people who are playing this video game just as a chore to get more pulling currency to satisfy their gambling addiction. That's me. I'm the people. Anyways, I'm not saying games need to be hard to be fun. There are many games that are easy and still fun. Plus, you know, fun is subjective and all that crap. But specifically with roguelites, I consider the learning curve to be very satisfying and enjoyable. Most of these games don't expect you to win your first run. They want you to learn and get a little further on your next run. But in gacha games, this is made to be something you do once a week in 20 minutes to get rewards, and then forget about it until next week. And if it was possible to lose, you might need to spend 40 minutes on it, and we can have that. Saying that might sound sarcastic, but I mean it. The devs have basically two options. They can make it so fun and engaging that people would enjoy it and wouldn't mind spending a lot of time with it, which, you know, is what most non-gacha games do. And it sounds nice, but the problem is that there is no way to make everyone enjoy it. Other games can do this because when you play Slay the Spire, you expect to, well, play Slay the Spire. But if you play your favorite waifu Gunnar Slop and they make you spend an hour on a roguelite you don't enjoy for the rewards, you are not gonna be too excited. So the devs go with the second option. They make it really easy and quick, so people will do it for the rewards even if it's a chore. And to be fair, most of these have some optional difficulty, and that's great. There is no disadvantage to having this, but it unfortunately does not fix much. A lot of this difficulty translates to enemies simply having bloated stats. This means that you need to actually play well instead of picking buffs randomly and button mashing, but it also highlights an inherent problem of all gacha games. If a gacha game has hard content, you can just swipe. I suspect this is the reason why the higher difficulties don't have proper rewards, because if they had, people who can't clear them would just complain about the game being pay to win. But the drawback is that there is no real incentive to play them. Now let me ask you a question. Do you know what's the difference between a roguelite and a roguelike? Most people use these interchangeably, and I think that's fair. But the difference is that if you lose in a roguelike, you start from zero. While roguelites have some meta progression. This could mean new unlocks or upgrades persisting between runs. So inherently, everything inside the gacha is a roguelite. Just to be clear, this is not a problem. But it leads into an interesting difference between traditional roguelites and gacha versions of them. The weird position gacha games are in is that most of the meta progression happens outside the roguelite. It's pulling new characters, upgrading them, and giving them new gear. Sometimes there's a roguelite currency that lets you buy persistent upgrades, but this is a relatively minor change compared to the standard gacha character building. And since playing the roguelite is not gonna be the first thing you do when starting a gacha, you are already going to the very first run with some progression. Before I move to some more specific examples, I want to add that another important thing in roguelites is that while you are playing the same game and learning the same core gameplay, every run is different. And while in gacha games you also won't get exactly the same run, every run feels the same. Not only does every run feel the same to each other, but it also feels the same as how you play the game normally. A roguelite should make you play the same game differently every time. A gacha roguelite makes you play the same game the same way, just with bigger numbers. So for the examples, I'd like to start by talking about Limbus Company's Mirror Dungeon. I'd say it's a bit of a lesser known one, but it's the one I've played the most, and you might already guess how I feel about this one. You might actually even know for sure if you watch this video. Mirror Dungeon has basically every single problem I mentioned. You pick your team at the start, and at that point, you know what you are going for. There's an option for you to change your team members, but I don't think there is ever a reason to do it. If you start with a bleed team, you will look for bleed gifts. They even make it easier for you by adding a bleed symbol on them. If you manage to find a great burn gift early, a lot of roguelites might make you think, damn, time to try building into burn. But here, nope. You can either sell it or use it to craft something more useful. The same way Project Moon meticulously crafted a roguelite, where you can get exactly what you want. It started with rerolls that have higher chances of what you want, floor rerolls, but now, you can just pick exactly the floor you want. At the very start, you can pick exactly what gifts you want. And yes, this costs you Starlight, but well, let's talk about Starlight. This is basically the meta progression here, a currency you get for every run. In the good old days, nostalgia baiting, you would use this to unlock nodes on a skill tree that would serve as a permanent upgrades. But for a while now, you can spend it on the already mentioned picking floors and gifts, but also for a single run buffs. And as you can probably guess, I don't like it. The first thing, I hate the fact that you can straight up choose the floors or gifts. This defeats the point of a roguelite. The other reason, which honestly might be just me thing, I enjoyed getting the permanent upgrades. It felt like you were working towards something other than just doing your weeklies. Even if it was just something like deal 1% more damage with slash envy skills used by female sinners against N-Corp enemies on 6th of July of every leap year. Now you just kinda save the Starlight until you want to either do something hard or use some to make your easy runs a bit faster. And the problem goes beyond just the upgrades. Even the question mark nodes, which are usually where roguelites have their interesting events, don't really help much. They're not unique situations that force you to make an interesting decision. They're just another way of getting a gift you could have gotten from a shop, a fight, or basically anywhere else. The only events that you'd actually want to hit are the ones that give you level ups. and that only matters on higher difficulty. As for the difficulty, here it's kinda awkward. I'm convinced that a normal 5 floor run is impossible to lose unless you are trying really hard to. And 5 floors on hard will also very much fall over if you are good at pressing the win rate button. The real endgame is finishing your weekly run faster so you don't waste your time on this. Well, that and floor 15 runs. If you decide to take your run to floor 15 and pick the adversities, the run will be significantly harder, and honestly, I find them also significantly more enjoyable. The thing is that even being significantly more enjoyable than a normal mirror dungeon isn't all that great. The first very obvious problem is the fact that to get to floor 15, you need to do all the previous floors, and as we already established, first 5 floors are mind-numbingly easy. I'd go as far as say that first 12 floors are, and compared to a normal 20-minute run, this will probably take you over 2 hours, with 90% at the start not being a threat, but just you preparing for the end. Which is the other problem, the whole run is just preparing. I made a guide when floor 15 first released, and every run is pretty much just a checklist of what floors you need to visit and what to find there. Even if you are the best Limbus player ever, if you don't roll higher than your enemy, it will be quite difficult to kill them. At the same time, I had plenty of runs where even on floor 15, I can still win by simply pressing win rate. And since it's so easy to force anything in this game, you will always get most of what you want. And I think that's the biggest problem with Mirror Dungeon. The mode is not really about adapting to what the game gives you or improving. It's about executing a plan you made beforehand. The roguelite elements are there, but only as a way to make your normal team stronger, not different. And that's why I don't think this mode works as anything other than a weekly chore. But let's move to a positive example. You know how at the start I said I'd never choose to play any of these for fun over a regular roguelite? There's one exception. Integrated strategies. Yes, it wouldn't be a Mastiza video without some Arknight's glaze. Let's start with the fact that this is not a weekly thing. You get to play whenever you feel like, because the rewards don't go anywhere. And since you are not expected to do this every week, they actually made the runs take quite a while compared to all the other ones. Normally over an hour, with some of the endings closer to 3 hours, though it might be just that I'm slow. These are also difficult, and it actually feels like an achievement when I win, but even if you care only for the rewards, you don't even need to win to get them, since even losses progress those. But let's rewind to the beginning of your run. Here, you don't pick your whole team. You get just 3 recruitment vouchers. Just as a reference, your standard Arknight squad is 12 operators. So how do you get more characters? You simply get more of these vouchers after every fight. And not only do you use these to get the characters, you need another one to upgrade them. To recruit higher rarity, you also need to spend a different currency, hope. So you can't just bring all your overpowered 6 stars, you will have to rely on some of the low rarity operators you might normally not use. These tickets are limited to a specific class, which means that you need to adapt to what you are getting. Maybe you wanted a healer, but keep getting defender tickets. Well, there are defenders that provide healing. Or if you don't have a ranged character, you can take a guard that can deal with the flying enemies. You change what characters you take as you progress the run, instead of deciding it at the start. This is unfortunately not always though. This also leads to some problems. The biggest one? To play as, not only you need to own quite a lot of characters, you also need to build all of them. It unfortunately means that you pretty much can't play it seriously as a new player for quite a while. The other problem is that your team in the endgame ends up looking quite similar. This is because most of the time, by the mid-game, you manage to collect the operators you want, and if you find, for example, a sniper voucher, you'd probably choose the best sniper, and there are characters that you will just never end up picking up over the others. Though there's a mechanic that incentivizes picking some of the characters you might not normally use. IS modules. So some characters, I believe often the underused ones, get these strong and often quite unique upgrades. These are only active in IS, which means that the devs can go quite crazy with them. So while there are characters that you would never use in a normal stage, they might be extremely viable option in a roguelite mode. The collectibles here also have a lot of different unique effects. Yes, there are some boring setups, but there are items that make you actually play differently. As an example, there are ones that benefit from using auto-trigger skills, even though these are rarely the best ones. Or there are ones that activate only on characters placed in a specific location. You also aren't able to simply trade collectibles you don't need for something else on every corner. If you get something that does not benefit you, you either have to build into it or have a useless collectible. This might be annoying when you play, but this is what a good roguelite does. You are not supposed to get only good stuff. Events are unique as well. Sometimes throwing you into a difficult combat, sometimes forcing you to make a decision. In IS-6, there's an event that makes you pick between 12 unique collectibles that you can't get any other way. I mentioned IS-6, and yes, that means exactly what you think. There are currently 6 different... Wait, 5? Right, yeah. There's 5 different integrated strategies, each with different stages, bosses, events, mechanics, and collectibles. This is a proper roguelite. There's variety, difficulty, and replayability. If this was a separate game on Steam, I'd actually buy and play it, because it's fun. Well, that will be the end of the video. If you enjoyed, you can follow me here and also on my Twitch, where I've been actually playing a lot of integrated strategies recently. I'll also be happy to hear your thoughts, because this is a topic I'm quite interested in, and would want to know what gacha roguelites you enjoy and why. Thank you for stopping by, and bye!